In the last movie, we looked at how to manage your control panel. Now let's look at InDesign's other panels. First of all, how do you open and close your panels to see them? Well, typically you have to use your mouse to go over here and say, click on the Pages panel, and then you see it. I want to really encourage you to learn the keyboard shortcuts for your panels. Now, you don't have to learn all the keyboard shortcuts for all the panels. Pick 5 of your favorite panels, the ones that you use all the time, and learn those shortcuts. So for the Pages panel, it's going to be Command F12 on the Mac or Control F12 on Windows. And of course, pressing that again will close the panel. You really want to get in the habit of using those whenever possible. Similarly, the Swatches panel, F5 and F5 again, will close it. How do you learn those? Just look in the window menu. Just click on the window menu, scroll down here, and you can see the Layers panel is F7. The Links panel is Command-Shift-D on the Mac or Control-Shift-D on Windows. All of these are listed here for you. Now, of course, you can edit these, as we learned in the InDesign Essentials title. You can edit these to anything you want. Just go to the Edit menu and choose Keyboard Shortcuts, and you can change these panels to anything you want. Just go to the Product Area Window menu, and they're all listed here in this product area. You can change links from Command-Shift-D to something different, and it will change. So I won't do that right now, because I want to work with the defaults. But in general, you can change those to whatever you can remember. And pick the 5 panels that you open and close all the time and learn those keyboard shortcuts. It really will make you more efficient in InDesign. Note that if you do have something selected, for example, this black bar up here, when you open a panel, let's say the Swatches panel, it will highlight whatever field is appropriate in that panel. In this case, it highlighted the first field available, and the only field in here, which is the Tint panel. I don't have to go in there and click on it myself. It automatically highlighted it. Let's say I change that to 80 and hit Enter. It will change to 80% tint, and I'm done. Hit F5 again, and it closes. So you have a lot of control there over those. By the way, there's some secret features there too. If I do an F5 to open the Swatches panel, now I can hit Tab, and did you see that? The highlighted area jumped from the tint to this area. This kind of got a little bit of a black bar around it. Now I can jump to something else. Let's say I want to make that paper. All I have to do is press P for paper, and it jumps to that. Or if I hit 2, it'll jump to some other. Or if I jump to 8, it'll jump down to this color. It's not very sophisticated, but it looks for similar matches in there, and it will jump right to that. In this case, I want it to be black, so I'll just hit B for jumping there. I could also use the arrow keys to move up and down. Arrow keys will move through these just as well. I'll just hit B again to jump back to black. Shift Tab to move back to the tint. I'm going to set it back to my 80%. Hit Enter, and I'm done. F5 will close it, and now I can move on. So you can use keyboard shortcuts to move through your panels very efficiently, and that is much better than having to use your mouse all the time. So let's look at a couple other cool shortcuts that you should know about. The Tab key. Just press Tab, and all of your panels go away. Shift Tab again, and they all come back. The Tab key can be very useful when you want to have a nice clean looking screen if you're showing your document to a client or something. The Command Option tab or Control Alt tab on Windows will hide or show all of your side panels. Did you see that? Let me do that again. All these side panels, the ones that are minimized in the dock so that you can see the icon and the name, or just the icon, all these panels expand out when you press Command-Option-Tab on the Mac or Control-Alt-Tab on Windows. It's basically the same thing as clicking on this little double-headed arrow at the top of the dock. Command-Option-Tab, or on Windows, Control-Alt-Tab. Another one, Shift Tab. Shift Tab will hide and show all your panels except for the Tool panel and the Control panel. I don't find that one very useful, so I usually forget about it, but I thought I'd at least pass it on to you just in case you need that sort of thing. So that's kind of handy. Earlier, I was pointing out that you can use the arrow keys to move up and down the Swatches panel. That was pretty cool. Those arrow keys also work in other areas as well. For example, anytime you have a numeric field or someplace that you can type a number or letters or anything, something like that, you can use those up and down arrow keys. So the up arrow key here in the X field will move this whole object over 1 point at a time. And if I do the down arrow, it'll move it back 1 point at a time. So that's kind of handy. if I add the Shift key, it does a larger increment. So in this case, because we're in picas mode, it'll do it in 1 pica at a time. It does, the Shift key adds in whatever the next logically large increment is. It's not always 5 times or 10 times as much, but it's whatever the larger increment is. So in this case, it's 1 pica instead of 1 point. So that's kind of handy. And now finally, I want to give you my favorite keyboard shortcut, and that is return to the last used panel field, whatever field I last used. Let me give you an example. I'll select this graphic in here, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate this, let's say 10 degrees. I'll hit enter. Now, of course, I could have used the keyboard shortcuts to get to the rotate field, but in this case, it was faster just to use my mouse. So there we go. So I rotated that 10 degrees based on the upper left corner. And I say, well, that looks pretty good, but I really wish it were maybe 12 degrees instead. How do I get back to the same field? Well, I could use the mouse button, but it's a lot faster to use a keyboard shortcut. What I use is Command-Option Grav Accent on the Mac or Control-Alt Grav Accent on Windows. And the Grav Accent is the key that's on the US keyboard. It's just to the left of the number 1. So Command-Option Grav Accent or Control-Alt Grav Accent on Windows will return you to the last used field. So now I can type 12, hit enter, and it's done. Now, if you don't use a US keyboard, or if you're not sure what that key is, no big deal. Go to the edit menu, choose keyboard shortcuts, go to the product area called Views and Navigation, and select Activate Last Used Field in Panel. This is the feature that I'm talking about, Activate Last Used Field in Panel. And you'll see that it's Command-Option Grav Accent on my keyboard, on my system. Yours might be different if you're using a non-US system. So figure out what that is and commit that one to memory, because it's really, really handy. And it'll jump to any field in any panel, whatever you use last, it'll jump right back to that. And I use that, again, 50, 100 times a day just to go back, because I'm forever making little tweaks to things. Okay, now you're getting the hang of it. Keep your hands on the keyboard as much as possible, and you are bound to boost your productivity.